All right, so I'm going to start out here with those images that I mentioned. Bill, I'm going to start with yours, and I'm just going to gradually pull them into Photoshop here. So I'll start with this first one, and it should, there we go. All right, this is so cool. So I love images like this that take this leading line and get you way right back into this image. So I'm going here, I'm going to try to pick a better icon. There we go. Pointer, there we go. So I can see this here. All these leading lines take me right back in, and you caught this at a really nice time of day where you still get illumination here as opposed to midday where the light, maybe you shot it midday, but it looks to me like you shot it at a time where the light's really coming in well from the side, and you get this nice illumination here all the way back through. I don't know if you want to share where this place is, but it's super, super cool. You're welcome to type that to me if you like, or unmute yourself. But first of all, I love that. Now this morning, I just gave a presentation for the, someone says, I just liked it on Facebook. I didn't know it would be here tonight. So this morning, I just got done giving a presentation for the digital imaging group here in Scottsdale. And I got talking about how you see your images so that you know how to post-process and what do you want people to do. And one of the things I mentioned was our eyes love contrast and texture. And so instantly, I'm seeing this this contrast and texture here, and it's just gorgeous. And these leading lines take me right back into the image, and I just love that. So so anyhow, can everyone still, you can hear me and see me? I have someone messaging me. Hopefully everyone can see and hear me. Let me just send a quick note to this person. Okay. All right. So anyway, so I love that about this quite a bit. I love even the leaves and the textures and all that blue into the back. I don't know if I would do a whole lot to this image. I'm looking at, and I'm going to do this very informally. I'm going to take a line and I'm going to draw it across here. So hopefully you can all see that. And I'm seeing, and I think this is an artifact of the angle a little bit because probably using a wide angle lens. If you can see the arches and you can see where this line is, let me see if I can do something better here, something more permanent. All right, so I've got that. I'm just going to fill it with some color here just so you can see something. There we go. Okay, so I've got this line here for a minute. And if you're looking at that line, see how the arch is perfectly set up here, and then this looks a little crooked here. However, if I took this and I brought it all the way to the back, that looks pretty level there. So I think there might be just a tiny skosh tad of the way you're positioned in these arches with your camera, and possibly a little lens distortion, or possibly a little bit of perspective going on there with regard to where that sits. So I'm going to take this out for a minute. One of the things that you might try to do, and I'm going to play with this. I don't know if there's enough room or if you've cropped this or not, but if I go to Edit, Transform, and I'm going to just say, well, I'll try distort for the moment. I can probably pull this part up a little bit. And there's a few different ways you could do that, but I just went to distort. So again, I went to Edit, Transform, Distort. And I pulled that up a little bit, and you might be able to, there's probably not a lot of room there. You might be able to kind of fix that a little bit with cropping or in post-processing if I spent a little bit more time with that. But what that did, if I did it correctly, whoops, not what I wanted to do. Let me grab that. No, I'm grabbing the wrong layer. Hold on. There we go. Now, if I went up here, I'm pretty close to level. I might play with that a little bit more. These are super silly little nitpicky things that I don't know if most people would even notice, but I'm just mentioning it as an option should you need to clean that up. One of the other things you could do, I'm going to flatten this for a minute, get rid of those layers, is you could go into your crop tool, and in Photoshop Creative Cloud, you have this option to check this box up here called Content Aware. And so if I clicked crop and Content Aware, I can actually extend this out a little bit more, and it should theoretically fill in. Now, this is a judgment call because some people don't want to add things that weren't there, and maybe too you cropped it and we could go back to the original image and fix that. But now that we did that, and you can see that it added more, right? So if I take that away, this is what the Content Aware Fill added. Now, if I flatten that, let me go here, then I could go into, I'll create another layer just so I have a background layer. I'll go to image, edit, transform, and I'll do distort again. And now I should be able to pull up that right side just a hair more. And I could even pull this out a little bit to straighten that vertical line. I'm doing it quickly. I think that's about right. And now you also should have, let me do it a little bit, oops, over here. No, I think it was straighter before. We'll play with those a little bit, but that would be how you could straighten up those lines a bit. And let me try warp. That might actually work a little bit better to straighten up that bottom line. All right, so just a thought, but you know, something I'm just playing with as a concept. So take it or leave it, you know, think about it, but that could be something to think about. And then I'm looking down here and I've kind of pulled this up a little bit. So now these are a little bit uneven. Again, all of this is kind of art and science here, but you may be able to straighten that so these are a little bit more even here without pulling this down too much, or stretch these up a little bit. I'm just playing with the ideas, but you get the idea of the tools that I'm using to try to straighten those things so they're absolutely perfect. But I absolutely love this shot. Now, if I wanted to play with something even more, it would be really cool if you went way back to, and not that you can do this necessarily in the situation you have, I would love to see back in here, like a silhouette of a person or a dog, somebody walking back into there, someone dressed in white way back in this corner. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, somebody resting against a wall here playing a saxophone. A person, a subject, a living thing in there would really even take it further next time you get a shot like this. But I'm not complaining. This is a beautiful image and really well done. So I am going to look at some of the comments here. Yeah, they love the arches, everybody in the group. All right, looks like, yeah, you could use ruler snap down as well, Bill. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, a bird flying through, you know, something unexpected, you know, a balloon, like if someone was standing behind one of these arches, held their arm out with a little helium balloon and let it go, like right, you know, pulled their arm away and let it go before it got to the top. You might have to play with that a little bit. That could be a fun thing. I'm just making up stuff, but now that you've got the goods with this image, then you could sit and play with it of what could I do in addition? You know, a cat, you know, anything. It would be very cool. A person moving through, if you used a neutral density filter, a person moving through, so you have slow shutter, and you just get this faint hint of that person, almost ghostly. Wouldn't that be cool? Yes, you could center it as well. I've kind of distorted this now from the original version, and I think it might have been fairly centered to begin with, but I could be wrong. You could do that via cropping as well, but you might lose a little bit of this over here. So again, pick your poison of what you like. Again, it's my opinion. It's, you know, doesn't have to stick, but I absolutely love it, and a really cool opportunity, Bill, and these arches are just gorgeous. I love it, I love it. All right, so I'm going to close out of that one, and we're gonna go to the next one here. All right, let me open this up. And this one is from Bill Cole. So, hey, Bill, thanks for submitting. And gosh, we have these cool tunnels and things tonight. I'm loving this. I have no clue where you were when you took this.
It was Carter Caves in Carter County, Kentucky.
Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. I love this. So,
One thing you should know is that this is a light painting exercise. It's
okay.
not the natural light. I was using about a 8 or 9 inch LED panel to provide the light on the
Oh.
rocks.
And did you warm up that light in the LED? I assume it has
Yes.
cool to warm. Yeah, because I'm really impressed that this was a painted light picture. Your LED explains a lot. You get a bit of more broad light as opposed to a flashlight where you can get lots of bright and dark images. And then I've got to ask, was this light back in here somebody else doing a
Nope.
light LCD back here?
That one is actually just natural sunlight coming in. This is one of the back
Oh,
exits to the cave.
got it. Okay,
And
this
that's
is
just sunlight.
exquisite.
That's sunlight bouncing off of the water and just interacting with the shadows.
Okay, so I love this for several reasons. First, painted images can sometimes look really garish and harsh. And I love that you warmed up the temperature of the light because LED lights can take on that cool blue tone, which can have its own prettiness, but I love that you did this. The other things that I really love, I'm going to put the crop window in here for a minute, is you really tried to adhere to kind of this rule of thirds idea of this being, to me, the most interesting part of the image because I come in and then I want to go, I'm like, what's around the bend here? You know, this is interesting. It's like, what's glowing? Is there an alien spaceship or you know, what is it around there, right? I mean, it just looks so cool. The other thing that I really love about it, I love images that juxtapose warm colors with cool colors. And just the way you warmed up the light in here, your camera read the sunlight, which usually isn't that blue, but it's also reflecting off water. That read that as blue, and you just instantly get this warm and cool tone to it, and I love that. So those are some really favorite things of mine here. The textures of the rocks and the lines, I mean, not that you could organize where the rocks go, but, you know, leading lines coming right in here, right? All these things, and then getting you back into this space. You also don't have a lot of hot spots down here. A lot of times when I see people light painting, they try to paint really close to where the camera is, and that light, you know, there's no fall off from the flashlight or whatever tool they're using because the foreground is so close to where they're standing. So these get really bright and artificial, and then the light fall off tends to um, not look so good. How you've done your lighting, and maybe you can talk to that a little bit more, but how did you avoid not having too hot of light here and you know, light fall off to the point where then this ends up being really dark? Can you talk about that?
Sure. The focus point of the light painting was actually where you've got your pointer at right now, almost the dead center of the
Oh,
end.
okay.
I was using an LED panel, and like I said, it's about maybe about an 8-inch LED panel. It was, you know, it's a pretty large size panel. It puts out a lot of light.
Okay.
And we were in a large cavern. This is actually about 2/3 of the image. I cropped out a lot that was on the left and the bottom.
Okay.
Um, the uh, the panel was on one of my favorite DIY things. It's on a paint stick with an adapter,
Mm,
so that, you know, the I'm basically got it up above my head about 3 to 4 feet.
okay.
And I was standing when I took it. This is looking over the guardrail of the walkway in the cave because it's
Okay.
the public cave as a state resort park.
Okay.
And so I just warmed the light up as warm as it would go, which I actually took down a little bit in post because it was a little too orange.
Okay.
And focused the light on, like I said, the very center of it. But it was a 20 or 25-second exposure,
Mm,
which allowed the water to kind of silk out a little bit.
yeah.
And I'm turning the light maybe from 10 degrees beyond the left edge of the full exposure to about 10 degrees beyond the right edge of the exposure
Okay.
there. So I'm actually bypassing everything. But I think with the light above my head is what kept it from getting hot. Right.
Okay.
I
That makes
really
sense.
like the idea of getting it above my head. This was the first time I'd ever tried light painting.
Oh, wow. Well, you knocked it out of the park because I see other people's first time and it looks like it. So, and it's tricky. It's not an easy thing to do. I'm actually doing it in a class this weekend, this coming weekend in Arizona, and it's a challenge to get it to look good. And I'm just impressed with this because I thought when I saw this that it might have been, I knew that it would be artificial light in a cave, but I thought it might have been,
Mhm.
you know, lights that were already there, you know, like, you know, planted there by the park or whoever did it because it looked so nice and even and it wasn't too blue and it wasn't, it just, you did a really nice job with it.
Thank you.
I wonder, and this is just an idea, and it's probably my personal taste more so than a
Mhm.
correct or incorrect thing. One thing that I wonder is if we just to pull me in a little bit, I always go, where does my eye look? And,
Mhm.
you know, and where does it get stuck? And I love the texture of these rocks here, I wonder if, and I'm going to use a low opacity, probably 5%, what would happen, and I don't know if I'll like this or not, but I'm just trying this, an ever so slight vignette, just pulling you in a little bit more into the image. And I realize this may look different on my monitor than it does on the ones that you're viewing.
I had the exact same debate that you're having with yourself right now. I've
Yeah?
vignetted it and then pulled it back out and put it back in and pulled it back out.
Yeah.
And I hadn't quite just, I think a small opacity vignette, probably a little less than you just did, would work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because down at the bottom left of it, it's starting to look a
Muddy.
little muddled.
Yep, it is.
Right.
I agree completely.
The other thing I liked about it is and what took a long time was finding the location, because what I call this one the way out.
Ah.
And so the rocks to me look like they're leading you right out the back.
Yeah, they do.
Back entrance to the cave, and that juxtaposition of the lines on out, and then the warm and the blue, or the orange and the blue, I thought was so cool.
Oh my God, I really love this. Like, I am giving ideas of things that don't even really need to be done, but I'm playing with it just because I like to experiment and see what works and what doesn't. So if light draws your eye back in, potentially you could play with that even more back there. But honestly, I'm experimenting. I'm not saying that this is a negative. I'm like, what would it do if this, if this or that or the other thing? Because I'm in love with this.
One question.
Yeah.
If you look down at the bottom, you've got like that long tier along the bottom, and there's the white rock that you started at.
Yes.
There's a harsh shadow just below where your pointer was.
Right here.
Just
right?
above, right there, and then there's another one above that stick.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yep. I
And
see.
above, a little bit higher than that, and there's another one on the right-hand side. Yeah.
Yep. I see them.
Right on. I was thinking about the possibility of just softening those shadows a little bit.
Possibly.
Not eliminating them, but just kind of softening the edges and seeing if I could use a combination of toning and color to just feather it out a little bit.
Yeah, you could try that. I'm going to flatten this for a minute, and I'm going to open it up in Adobe Camera Raw because I seem to have better luck with that. You could do the same thing in Lightroom.
Oh, yeah.
So if I open it up in
Raw.
there.
Raw rocks.
Raw rocks. It does. Especially in this image.
Yeah, I never use Lightroom because Raw is basically the same thing without the organizational skills.
Exactly. So if I just, all I'm doing, for those who have no clue what I'm doing, all of these settings are at 0, and I am just taking my shadows, and keep in mind I'm recording this if you want to watch it again, and I'm just pulling up the shadows so that when I go in with my adjustment brush, and I'm going to make that brush not real big here. I'm actually going to zoom in some more, maybe even more. And then I can go in and I can lighten up just those shadows, and it won't touch the other colors. And you might even be able to feather the edges a little bit with some creative blending or cloning. And
yeah, that's about what I was thinking.
A little bit. Yeah.
Just a little cloning with a really soft brush.
Yeah.
And a low opacity to kind of blend it back in a little bit.
Exactly. And I kind of went over, I colored outside the lines, Bill. So it was Bill, right? Yeah. So I colored outside the lines. I think you could do that. And then, if I take that section and I even pull up those shadows a hair more, I think you could soften them up. I'm doing it super quick, right? So
of course,
you could soften them up.
You've got to move on to somebody else's picture too.
Yeah, exactly. But I think you could do it. I think it would, cut those down a little bit. I'm usually picky about that, and it didn't jump out at me. So it might be something you personally and or on my monitor, which I just got a new one and I haven't had the chance to even calibrate it yet, which could be part of the problem. It may look different on my screen than yours, but yeah, you could try it. But some contrast is good. So, it gives a little separation. So I wouldn't remove it completely, but softening it out might be a good idea. Yeah. Love the image. Thank you for sharing it. It's beautiful. Really cool opportunity. And for a first, what's going to happen. You're going to light paint from here on out, and you'll be like, I never have as good a day as I did that first day, right? Beginner's luck.
That usually is what happens with me. I do it right once and I can never find it again. But yeah,
we all have those moments. So, but I love it. I think you did a beautiful job. So thank you for submitting.
I look forward to seeing you again when you come back to Lexington next year.
Oh, I would love to. I got to talk to Param about setting something like that up because I just had a blast the last time.
We're waiting for you.
Good.
So we got an audience ready for you.
I love it. And I happily and wholeheartedly come back. For those who have no clue what we're talking about, I presented for the Lexington, Kentucky Camera Club this summer, and apparently they liked what I did. So anyhow, thank you, Bill. Christine, it was so good to see you last weekend. Christine came to my butterfly identification and photography workshop with myself and Marceline Vandewater, who's an expert butterfly person and was able to help us with the IDs. So Christine, what kind of butterfly do we have here?
I think it's a painted lady, but
I believe you are correct. There were painted ladies and there were American ladies. Yeah. Oh, and there were California ladies.
There was a California lady or something too. There was a different one that had a small spot, white spot in the inside of the wing or something.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, I love what you did here, and it looks like you took one of my tips of finding something in bright sunlight, exposing for the bright things, and then moving and positioning yourself so there was something dark well into the background, right?
Yeah, I always like to try to figure out the different angles and take it from both directions and see which looks better.
Yeah, I agree. I love doing that. I love what you did. I also love, and I'm going to throw out my crop tool just because it does a nice rule of thirds. I love that you kept this part in the PowerPoint, and I even agree with your choice of leaving it down a little bit more. If you would have kind of thrown the butterfly way up here, I feel like normally I like things exactly in the power, or pretty close, but I think it would have been too top heavy, and then you would have had these guys way down here and it would have felt disconnected. I really like this, and I love the fact that you put the stem on the rule of thirds. I think you did a great job of getting the dark in the background, and that's, for those who don't know, there's a technique where you expose for, maybe use spot metering, for example, and you expose for these really bright things, but then you've got to find something in the background that's really, really dark. It could be a dark shrub, a shadow, a car in the distance, whatever it is that happens to be dark. And then you expose properly for this, the background goes black. There's not enough light for the background to have anything show up because this is in such bright light, and it really can create a beautiful look. It looks like you did it in a studio with a black backdrop. So I love this. Christine, you also did my favorite thing, which is get the eye and tack sharp focus. This is gorgeous, right? Beautiful.
Oh yeah, I love eyeballs. It's like, especially when they have texture, you can see little facets on them.
Yeah, you can even see the shadow of the antenna in it, which I think is cool. I really love this, and even when I zoom way in, it's still, it's nice and sharp. I mean, obviously you lose a little detail because that's natural. I'm 1% of the whole image here, but it looks really cool. I really like what you did here, and I like these other two over here. One thought, and I don't know, again, we're going to play with this. I don't know how it would work. I'm going to pick ContentAware. If I left a little more room for those other two flowers, and I just did something like this, let's see what happens here with the magical ContentAware Fill. Sometimes it works great, other times not so much. It might just give a little breathing room to the edge. There we go, more or less. We can clone out that extra little mistake that the ContentAware Fill did. It might just give you a little bit more breathing room in that image. I mean, it's an easy thing to do. I'm not doing it perfectly here. Let me flatten this first. It might help a little more. All right, so I'm kind of getting rid of that. I got to play with it a little bit more. I think this side was okay. Whoops, sorry. That scroll happy. I have a new mouse, and the scroll button, you touch it and it like zooms to China on you. So anyway, that might, and I would play with it a little bit more just to kind of color match that stuff down there with the darker area. Might just give you a little more breathing room, but that's such an easy thing to do. Other than that, I just love what you did. I don't think I would change anything else. It's truly beautiful. And maybe
I tried the cropping. I cropped it horizontally.
Yeah.
And it was not as interesting. And
no,
it just wasn't as cool.
I can't imagine that it would have been. I think the way you did it right now is perfect, taking advantage of those vertical lines. And I just gave it a little breathing room up here. I think you did a great job. I love it. And other than that little breathing room, I wouldn't do another thing. I think you did a superb job, and it was a pleasure seeing you in the class the other day. It was a lot of fun.
It was fun. Yeah, and I just took the EV on this and turned it way down, basically. That's how I darkened the background.
Okay.
I can do it live on my camera, and you can see it, and you go, there I go.
Yeah. Yes. You have a mirrorless, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a nice feature with those. And some other cameras have it too, but I love that. Yeah, really nice job. And I love this punch of the fuchsia or purple or whatever you want to call it. Just super, super cool. So thank you for submitting that. Beautiful
Oh,
job.
cool.
And it's nice to
Thanks.
see the results of class from 2 days ago.
Yes,
So
it was
thank
fun.
you. It was fun. It was good to see you. All right, we're going to move down the list here. Christine, you have got one more here that I'll feature.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. So, so this is cool for those who don't know about butterflies. This is called a queen. They look similar to monarchs, but they're a queen. And the males will actually feed the nectar off of these ageratums, these wild ageratums. The females will not. And the males, I learned this from our butterfly expert, the males will feed off of it. It has a certain chemical that when the males go and visit the female for that special time together, the males will deposit that chemical into the female via the sperm package. The female then transfers that to the eggs and then the young, and it's actually a protectant from predators. So you'll never see the females on these plants. You will only see the males on this particular type of plant. Females will feed on other stuff. So I learned something cool and new and different during that class the other day, and found that fascinating. So anyhow, now I'm sharing it with all of you. So I love the fact that you've got, I'm going to zoom in here, you've got nice tight focus on the proboscis, you've got the face in focus, and that's hard to do when the thing's moving around and, you know, flowers are blowing and whatnot. Love, love, love that. I like the face on approach because most of the time people photograph butterflies and it's always about, you know, the wings, which are cool, but I kind of like this different perspective, face on. I like the angles of these lines here quite a bit. The one thing that I'm struggling with a teeny bit is this merging of the wing with this stem here. And a lot of me likes the stem because like it adds a little bit of a diagonal line to it. It's just the merging part that I struggle with a little bit. So I don't know if there's a sister image like this one that you have where it's maybe not merging so much. That could be an option. You could, I say fix with air quotes, fix it in Photoshop, but it would take a little bit of work, but we could try it. We could do it, right? I mean, I could go in and I could play with this, and I'm not going to do a lot with it, but I could take this very gently and I could cut it. All right, and I'm doing this very, very quickly. Normally I would take more time to do this, but I could cut it and I could paste it and I could move it over.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And then I can go in and mask out these errors and I could clone this out errors, these, you know, my sloppy cuts. I could go and mask that out, and then I could go in the underlying layer and then start cloning this back out. And it would take some time, my dear, which you may or may not have a lot of, but for those who have no clue what I'm talking about, I would go in and start, you know, getting rid of these things. And you could use healing brush. You could use the patch, the healing patch. You could do a lot of different things with this, but I would start getting rid of that. Then you'd create some separation here, and that might just, you know, help that image a little bit. So if you got a sister image, that's like 10 tons easier. And if not, and I'm doing this super quickly, you could do this. Now, I'm going to say something quick for all of those who are like, what? You're changing the image? What are you doing? I'm not talking about this for a photo contest where you're not supposed to, you know, alter things and da-da-da-da-da. I'm talking about, do you want this on your wall in a way that looks pretty? Well, here's a way to kind of fix some things that might be, you know, not so awesome. So if I flatten this down a little bit, you know, you can start to get rid of all of these things. It's just going to take some careful work and cloning, but you could create some separation there by moving this over. Where it's going to get tricky is back down in here, but it's doable with enough time. But I like
there's not enough time for that. That's why I take multiple photos.
Right, exactly. You probably have 300 from the day. But what I do love, I love this diagonal line here. I love that you introduced the diagonal line. I love that this mirrors that. And I love these flowers and the color harmony with the orange and the purple. That's the only little squeaky thing. And I do still like the diagonal line here. I just would maybe move it over if you could, or find a sister image. And I love your depth of field choice so that this is sharp and these are all back here out of focus. All right, so thank you, Christine. I'm gonna move along just so I can make sure we get everybody's images in here, but cool submission.
Cool.
All right, Diane, oh, you're welcome. And thanks again for coming the other day to the class. So Diane, these are the coolest flowers. Are these, are they phlox? What is this? I don't know if you can speak out loud. They're gorgeous. Or maybe you can chat me the answer to that, if not out loud. Let me find my chat window here. Okay, so I don't see a response yet, but Diane, if you're on the line tonight, this is super duper cool. I love when people get intimate shots like this and you have a lot of pattern and texture. I think this is really neat. One of the things that can be really hard in shots like this, depending on the lens that you use, and I don't know if that information will show up here in the metadata, but I'm going to try to look here. Camera data. Oh, wait, you're at 25 millimeters, 120, can't talk, 1/125th of a second, f4 ISO 125 pattern metering. I think all of that is a pretty good choice. I'm surprised, but then when I see your wide angle, when I see f4, I would normally be surprised to see all of these things in reasonable focus because f4 is pretty shallow depth of field. But you're also using it at a 25 millimeter focal length, which gives you more depth of field at f4 than like zooming in on something. And if you want a quick example of that, I'm going to show you. So this is a sample, you know, girl standing there with a pinwheel. If I'm shooting her at a focal length, I'm going to say 55 millimeters, and I've changed nothing. You said you were at f4, so I'm going to pull this back down to f4, and I'm going to pull my ISO down. I just want to show you what I'm talking about with this because her ISO was at, let me look here, 125. Exposure was 1/25th of a second. So if I bring that up there, you can see that at a focal length of 55 millimeters, right, where I'm zooming in on her, you can see the background is fairly blurry using these settings. If I take my focal length back down to 25, which is what she used, and you can see that this becomes clearer. And then if I'm getting in closer, like if I go real close to her, the background will start to blur out a little bit more. So for those who are newer, what I'm trying to get at is your lens itself, f4 is not equal whether you're standing 5 feet away or 5 inches away or using a 100 millimeter lens versus a 25 millimeter lens. All of those variables change your depth of field and what you can, you know, how focused something is from front to back and even top to kind of these layers in here. So your wide angle lens gave you that depth and clarity that I think this needed. If you were to shoot it with something else or stand at a different distance, you might not have had that same feeling. I love these sweeping lines of these buds coming in here. The only little things that I might consider doing if you really want to kind of get, let me cancel out of this, really want to get nitpicky, and I'm going to just be very little detail nitpicky, is whenever I see white things on the edges of an image, I want to look and see if that's something I should get rid of or subdue. So like this edge over here, this little stem way over on the end, I might want to just get rid of that. It may not let me, so I'll try, instead of a healing brush, I'll try cloning. But that's something I might want to do to just get rid of that little edge. And these are really picky things. So forgive me for just being really picky, but it's things judges look for and things that I've learned not to do over time. This one here is pretty close to the edge and a little distracting. I may be able to use ContentAware Fill with the healing brush and get it to go away. Sometimes that recognizes it brilliantly, other times not so much, so we'll let that spin. That's a little better, might need a little cleanup work there with it. So those are some of the things that I sometimes look at, and then if that's not enough, then sometimes I could do a little dodging or burning or an overlay layer to kind of, you know, subdue some of those bright edges. I don't see really too much anymore here, but that's something to just think about. And then the other thing is that your eyes go to the brightest things and then the darkest things. And in the center of the image, there's some bright over here, but it's a little bit darker in here. You could either play up the stems in here, or I could go with my white brush on an overlay layer at about 5% opacity and just bring up some of the white in these flowers ever so slightly. This fuchsia purple color is a tricky one to work with. So I'm just giving you one idea on this, but it might keep it a hair more balanced where you need it. So just pulling these in so that this over here doesn't pull my eye way over and then I'm lost in the middle. So again, you know, you can do that a little bit more, but you get the idea. And then similarly, I can go over here on the left, change to my black brush and tone that one down just a hair. Not a lot, just a little. And I realized that was the thing we photoshopped, so we need to clean that up a little bit. But that might be something that just helps your image stand out a little bit more. I could even pull up some of these, the little, whatever you want to call them, the stems and the buds and so forth of this super duper cool plant that I really love. I used to be a floral designer for about 15 years, and I did a lot of gardening, and I love this color and these types of flowers. So that's one of my thoughts. I might play with this stem up over here, maybe darken it a hair just to take down my eye from wanting to get in there so much, and I could play with that a little bit with painting over it or burning down the highlights up here. So I'm going to go to my highlights, burn that down a little bit just so it's not so, and again, I'm doing kind of a sloppy short job here, just not so evident. So anyway, those are a couple of thoughts that I have, but I really, really love the image. I love the composition. I love the fact that things are on a diagonal and that you get these sweeping lines through here with the buds. There's no hard stopping point here for my eye. I don't get stuck on something, and I really like that. So let me see here. Some comments here, and Bill, thank you. It says, yes, I'm being picky. You say, to me, it's finding the things that make a good image into a great image, into a best of show image. And you're right. And these are things that I have learned over time, and I still, you know, can always learn more. But my big thing is, where does your eye go? Where does it stop? Where does it lean towards? And if it's not what you want it to be, if it's not what your viewer is doing, then, you know, we need to change it. And often it's the subtlest of things. So far, I haven't, you know, gone crazy with saturation or sharpen. I've gotten rid of a few things, and I've lightened or darkened a couple of things strategically. And, you know, you could do even more of that depending on, you know, what you really wanted to bring up or down. I mean, I could dodge some highlights some more and, you know, and bring some things up, whatever you need to do. But that's kind of what I'm thinking about as really all that's needed for this, because it's quite lovely. I love the color. I also love the fact that you didn't oversaturate it. A lot of people go with that slider and just get nuts, and you did a really nice job with that. Someone else says, where can I play with the camera sim? I think that could help me. Camera sim is an amazing tool. If you go to www, which is the tool that I used a minute ago, camerasim.com, and you can subscribe to different versions. You know, you can either download it, or there's some online ones, but you can, if you're just an individual, you can go in and it'll allow you to try different lenses and play with different settings. I use it a lot in my instruction for basic exposure. So camerasim.com, and I will type that in as well, so everybody has that link. Okay, I'm going to move on here to the next image. We've still got several to look through, but nice job, Diane. All right, I'm really seeing an increase in the caliber of the images here over the past, this critique especially. Everybody's up in their game, and it's really nice to see. This is lovely. I assume that this is maybe in Colorado or Montana. I'm not 100% sure, but Diane, it's beautiful. This place, I just want to put myself there. I've got the wildflowers coming in, this pond or lake or ditch or whatever it is here. I think it's just lovely. I love the reflection. I haven't seen everybody's reflection images in the Photography is a Journey group, but I hope that you put that one in there because this would be a really nice one. So in looking at this, I love that you got the house in here. I love that you got the mountains and all those kinds of things. I am wondering, this is fine the way it is in your aspect ratio. I'm going to give you something to chew on. If you could go next time you shoot something like this, and I don't know what's on either side of this. There could have been, you know, the bank to the right of it and, you know, and a tractor to the left. And this is where your one little kind of window into this world. So I get it if you couldn't do this. But if you can, it would have been cool to do a 2-shot pano and extend this out a little bit further. I doubt ContentAware Fill will quite do this the way I expect, but you'll get an idea of what I'm thinking, because this lends itself to these sweeping panos. And I think you can get even more out of this. But keep in mind, Diane, I don't know what you were looking at, so this might have been the sweet spot. So realize that I trust you are making some good decisions here. So this is artificially created. But you see how this all of a sudden starts to feel like a really nice sweeping pano? Now, what if I did it some more, right? And you get kind of this longitudinal view that could be absolutely gorgeous. And again, I'm just doing with ContentAware Fill to give people a visual. I'm not saying that you could necessarily do that successfully, maybe with enough work. You know, you get a lot of repetition and cloning here, which I don't love that, but you get the idea. This really feels like a pano to me. So a couple options could be do a 2-shot scene, right? Take this side over here and then take that side over there and then combine them in post as a pano. And if you did that, I would leave a little more room for the house so that you have this, you know, just in off the edge a little more. But I think that could be a really cool option. Option 2, if you just took it as your original shot, right? We're not extending these out, we're just doing this here. Option 2 would be to maybe close it in a little bit in a couple of ways. Either, and I like the sky, but you could get rid of a little bit of the sky if you needed to and kind of create that pano feel this way. So this is option 1. And then I'm actually going to flatten this for a minute. And then I'm going to pull this image in again. Let me see here if it'll go. Come on, computer. Let me try it again. Maybe it doesn't want me to do the copy. Usually it will, but maybe not today. Let's see here. Or it's just that my computer is really slow. It doesn't seem to want to do that today. All right, so I guess I'll do it manually. So, you know, cropping to, well, how about this? I'll just undo what I did. Oops. All right, so there's the original. There's the, you know, modified version. Here's the original. But if I were to do the original, what I would probably do, just thinking out loud, is I would probably take it, let me do this. I'm going to grab this, and then I'm going to create a new image with it. And then I will have a separate thing I can work from. Okay, yes, I want a new document. Create that. It's not the shape that I wanted. I don't know why it did that, but we will fix that. All right, we'll try approximately that. I'll paste that in here, and we'll see how, what? Sorry, this must be doing something it's normally not needing to do. So let me cancel that. Let me take this copy. I'm going to copy. And now I'm going to paste that in there. There we go. Okay, so I'll get rid of those little edges. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking, actually. Let me go to the original this way. All right, so your original image looked like this, Diane. And you've got a very kind of, I don't need it to fill. Sorry about that, guys. My computer is just having a mind of its own. And I agree, Christine, about the nice diagonal lines in the fence post. I mean, that just takes me right into that image. I absolutely love this image. And someone asked, by the way, D. Haze. Yes, I was actually, you and I are reading each other's minds here. I think dehaze could help quite a bit with some of the mountain things. So let me get rid of those white lines just so it looks easier. What am I doing here? Diane, sorry. I'm trying to create 2 copies of your image and it's not quite working the way I had intended. Let me try this one more time. Just doesn't seem to want to do what I want it to do. There we go. All right, so there's your full image. I'm going to get rid of the ends here one more time. All right, so the panel was one idea, but in here, here's also what I'm thinking. So down here at the bottom, there's, oh my goodness. That's what I get for doing too many things at once quickly. There we go. But down here at the bottom, here's my thoughts. I love that you're framing the bottom with the weeds here. And I don't know how you're able to stand and what's in front of you and behind you. So know that I recognize a challenge can certainly be there. I would love to see a little bit more of these grasses down here, a little more densely, if I'm going to frame the bottom. Otherwise, it kind of feels like there's almost an edge there, but not quite. So an option, because I don't know if this does a whole lot for me personally, it could if there were some more space down here, but I'm wondering if we couldn't take it up a little bit, and I'm experimenting here, get beyond that clump of grass, get into, and we can fix a few things here, get the sky pulled down a little bit. And now I've got something that feels a little bit more panoramic. And let me do a little bit of cloning work on here. And we could kind of get rid of that little thing that just takes our eye away from it. I'm trying to do a healing brush and it, oh, not too bad. So that's a little bit of a thought that I had. And so I've kind of tightened it in a little bit. And then someone had said about, well, what about dehaze? So if I went into filter camera raw and took some dehaze, there's a tool called dehaze. Let me find it in here. And I could dehaze this a little bit. And oh, that didn't look at all like what I wanted. I've undehazed it. Sorry, it's been a while since I've used that tool. Camera raw filter, and I don't want to add haze. I want to dehaze, so forgive me about that. I'll go into my effects and dehaze. I want to actually add the dehaze, not take it away. And I'm doing an approximation. It may look different on your monitor than mine. It just pulled up that sky and kind of added some definition to these mountains. And if you, it may have over-defined some of this down here. So what you can do is then do a mask and then take your brush tool. So mask is this little box at the bottom, and it allows us to reveal the underlying layer. So I added the treatment to the whole image, but if I mask it out, I click on this, I then go to my white and black brush. Black removes the top layer, white adds it back, but you have to click on that layer first and then click this little mask tool and it will add this extra white box. That tells me that there's a mask layer there and I can start literally using this like masking tape. And if I peel off the masking tape, it reveals the underlying layer. And I'm doing this at such a low opacity. But I can reveal that because sometimes dehaze darkens things or adds extra crispness that's not needed. So I can remove some of that. And then you get to see the underlying layer. And I'm just doing it at 50% opacity. But you'll see now, if I turn that off and on, now it's just dehazing the top part and I've left this more natural. So that could be a few options for your image. I love that you didn't oversaturate it. I love the composition. I'm just thinking it just feels like a pano to me. And so there's a couple different ways to think about that. There was the one that I did here with, you know, the cloning, which I realize looks a little stupid, but I just keep wanting to follow these lines. And the original image in that square, for me, you know, it could use a little more space, but your eye for the composition and what you did was great. And I freaking love this scene. So well done on that with just a couple ideas for the future. All right, I'm going to go to the next one. And John, I hope you were able to jump in here and see the image. I know you were there might have been an issue earlier with you being able to get in. So hopefully you're on the line. And I'm going to pull your owl image up, which I love owls. And this is just ridiculously super lucky and cool. Looks like you were in Phoenix for this one. And so I love this from several perspectives. Your wings are sharp. Your focus is just spot on. And a leaping bird is a hard thing to get in focus with those eyes because you don't quite know when it's going to leap, and you've got to track that focus point. I assume you probably used AI Servo or the Nikon equivalent, the continuous focus, or maybe you're in some other brand of camera, but this is really beautiful. And actually, if I go to file info, I can probably tell, oh, no camera data in this one. Okay, regardless, this is beautiful. The light is gorgeous. I really love everything about this. The diagonal lines are cool. It's sharp. I mean, I can zoom right in on this, and that's just really nice and sharp. Looks like maybe you've done a little bit of sharpening, or it's just the pixelation depending on the image, but it's still, I can tell you focused it properly. You can't sharpen an unsharp image, and a lot of people try, and it just looks really pixely. So you did a beautiful job. Even the way the eyes are lit, or maybe you did a little post in here to just bring out that other eye, which owl eyes can be tricky sometimes. I really like this. I don't know a whole lot else that I would do with it. You know, sometimes I go, oh, is this stick in the way? But if I took it out, I don't have any context for what it was leaping off of. So, I mean, I think this is just awesome, and I would keep doing what you're doing. I think you did a really, really good job. There's not really anything that I would change here. And you know, if people are wondering, like, there's some negative space up here, but if I cropped that down, I mean, it's not bad. It could work too, but there's a point sometimes where it feels like there's no room for the animal to move. I like this. I just don't have anything negative to say about it. It's not that I'm trying to find negatives, but I should say anything to critique or suggest. I think you just did a beautiful job. So thank you for sharing that, John. It's good to see you on the line as well. All right, so we're at about the top of the hour, and I still have a number of images. I know that I said I would do as many as I can in the hour. I'll stay on for a few more minutes and try to get some more done here. And if not, if for some reason I can't get to all of these, I will reserve them for the next submission, and they'll be you know, the first ones to go for the next time I do this. So this is ridiculous. I love this. I don't know what the story is with this image. John, I'm still not sure if you're on the line or not, but wow, is this cool? I'm just in love with this. I don't know where this was taken, if it was in the woods, in the desert, in the zoo, I have no idea where, but it is exquisite. This bobcat or lynx, I'm not even sure what species this is. It looks like a foreign species, maybe. I don't know. Quite awesome. I know those eyes are just really, really beautiful. I love this splashing, I don't know if it's dirt or water spray. If I zoom in, yeah, it's water. How wickedly ridiculous. I don't know if the cat was, it doesn't look like it was shaking. I don't know. I want to know the story behind this, because the light and everything is just super duper duper cool. I don't know where you got it, but I think that you should definitely do this some more, because it's just super cool. What would I do differently? I don't know that I would do a whole lot differently. You know, you've got this tree here, which part of me is like, oh, I wish this was gone, but that could be an easy fix to make that gone. But there's something that anchors this for me also. I think it's a tree, you know, to the fact that this is outside. If you played with the eyes, and again, this could be my computer, not necessarily anything that you have done. Keep in mind, I just got this new monitor, and I haven't even had a minute. I've barely been home. I haven't even had a minute to calibrate it yet. So I'm just wondering if we played with the eyes a hair more. Don't know if that would quite do the trick, but we could try. Bringing that glossiness out just a little bit. It's not bad though. What you did is quite lovely. Toning down the blacks a little bit, bringing that back. I don't know if that really does much at all. Let's look at the before and then the after. think it makes it punch just a hair. But again, it could be just on my monitor. But geez, this is really cool. Oh, so it was a misting system. Yeah, that's probably what it is. That makes sense. Really, really cool, John. Was this a bobcat? Where were you? She sat for 15 minutes and took a bath. Put my watermark on it and call it mine, Joel says. I love it. Yeah, this is really beautiful. John, what a catch. I mean, you should be so excited about that. Here's one little suggestion. Let's just get rid of that little, get rid of this little teeny white spot up here. It just pulls my eye there. But gosh, this is just, I hope you've submitted this to something because it's just gorgeous. Really, really gorgeous. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Be proud of it. Outstanding. It's fun to see these images, everybody. You're doing amazing work here. All right, I'm going to move on. Thank you, John, so much for sharing those. And I'm gonna stay on a few minutes. Many of you may be on the upcoming webinar at oh, I don't know what time it is, your time, 6:30 my time, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern. So I do need a short break between those to prepare for that. But we should be, you know, I'll stay on a few more minutes here. All right, Karen, I know the story behind this image because a certain other person on the line here tonight, Joel, told me where you guys were shooting, and this is in the mountains of, well, it was in the Smoky Mountains. I'm not sure what state, if it was Tennessee or Kentucky where you were. Busted. But yeah, this Tennessee. Okay, this is so pretty. Your water treatment is lovely. So I'm going to zoom in on it for a minute, Karen, because sometimes people really get these things overexposed and or don't let the shutter speed drag long enough to still see the texture, or sometimes it's so long everything just looks kind of muddy. This is really pretty. I really genuinely like it. And what I like about it is how you treated the rest of the scene so that this is the star of the show, which I know it's supposed to be, but I could easily see people punching up the light up here. I don't know if you can see with that tool. Let me get my pointer tool. I can easily see people kind of pulling up the highlights here and trying to add a lot of detail and texture. And all I see with that is it competing with this down here for me personally. So I think it's the right amount of light and shade, at least on my monitor. And keep in mind, everybody's monitor might be different than mine. I really, really like this. And to tell you that I think there's difference in calibration, I have two monitors open at the moment, and I have this image open on my laptop monitor versus my desktop monitor, and my laptop monitor has a bluer feel. This one has more of a neutral gray feel, but I love it. Again, I'm not really sure what else I would do, and I'm looking carefully, right? So like, I want to help you with these things if I can, and I really like it. You didn't overdo it with this. Go ahead, Karen.
The trees in the background up at the top right corner.
Yes.
I actually have the original shot open on my screen here at the house, and there was no depth in the original picture. So I used the burn tool and put some depth in there because it came out all even across there. But in looking at it with the natural eye, I saw more depth and things like that. So I did a little bit of burning there and a little bit of burning on the left side.
Yes.
That was about it.
Well, those were smart choices.
But Joel was working with me a lot. Yeah, he was working with me a lot because I am getting that white out, that brightness. So I was working really hard to not have that on the water.
It was such a smart choice, both of you, because the star of the show is really that, waterfall, creek, whatever you want to call it. And I literally just gave a presentation this morning about where does your eye go and where do you want your audience to explore, and there's a point in some images where people have the attention drawn to too many things, and that can be done a lot with light and shade and problems with too many, too much brightness or shadow in certain areas, and it takes your eye away from where you really wanted it to go. So everything in here becomes the supporting actor, and the river is the star of the show. And even little things, and I know you can't control the rocks, but you can control some things in post. Even the fact that this down in here tends to be a little brighter. Now, even if it wasn't, you could bring that up in post, and I don't know if you did or not, but that choice so that this wasn't a line of demarcation, that this really got your eye in here. It's not too bright down here, which is smart, but you have just enough to get my flow here and through this, and then all this wonderful contrast, which your eye always goes to the points of highest contrast first, and then back through. All of this just says, yup, I'm in the woods, and it just feels so cozy and so wonderful. This isn't overdone, but I agree with your choice to burn in a little bit here to create some layers and some depth where the camera didn't pick up on that. Smart, smart choice. You guys, good teamwork on the photography for this. So, and I got privy to hear some of the details as you were shooting it. So really, really nice job. I'm going to move quickly here so that we can get to a few more before we go. Let me pull this one up. And Karen, this is another one of your waterfalls, or I say waterfalls, river, creek, whatever all those things are out there. You know, I like this one too. And what's interesting is, you know how there are certain rules where you always say, you know, yeah, this is a rule you should never do. And then sometimes you break the rules, but it really works. I feel like this is one of those cases where rules are sort of broken, but with really smart reasons and choices why. So normally I would say, oh, the branch is in the way, but you know, I kind of really like this here. And this is a big, heavy rock to kind of be sitting over here. And sometimes that big, heavy, bold thing can pull your eye out of the picture. And it easily could, but the fact that this is burned down quite a bit, or maybe that was the natural light, I don't know, but that only this part is bright sort of makes this rock less heavy. And then I've got this nice line of contrast here. So this keeps my eye in, this keeps my eye in. I don't feel like it's quite as heavy. That's my opinion. Somebody else may look at this and completely disagree, but it does, you know, Joel, you said it helps keep things balanced, and it really does. And then you've got smart choices in processing with giving me the bright light in here with the rushing water, because if you didn't have this so bright back here, my eye would keep stumbling against this twig. But I like the twig, and then it gets me back up into these pieces here in the image. You know, I'm going to be really.
This was actually.
Yeah.
Oh, this was, there's like a delay and an echo, sorry. This was actually cropped down. There was a tree to the left and a tree to the right.
Okay.
And it was just irritating,
yeah.
But I liked what was in the middle. So
I
I
do too.
cropped down, and when I did that, I started to see the beautiful flow of the water, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's where I want to be.
Yes. And Karen,
Yeah.
Little silly things that I'm going to just say, get rid of that little leaf, maybe anything that's kind of bright along the edge.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like nitpicky, but it takes your eye away. Even like this right here,
See,
I might just.
at the top, very top on the left, yeah, up top.
Yep.
Yep.
A couple of those things, and they're so minor, but it is just stuff that my eye gets tripped up on. I want to be able to circle around and not find stuff, you know, where there's high contrast, your eye tends to trip over and stop. So that's what I'm looking for. Those are little teeny little things, but I love it. I love these pieces, and they belong together in a room, right? You could have one on one side and one on the other. They're different enough to be different, but they're cohesive enough that it would look really nice in a you know, bedroom or living room or office or whatever. So nice job, good work. You guys did a good job with your photography on that one. All right, I've got a few more minutes. I'm going to try to get through. What have I got? I got 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get through all of them, but I will do my best. All right, so Leslie, you're next. And if you're wondering, I'm going in alphabetical order here. So, oh, what a pretty color palette with this. I just love the colors. And it looks like this is spines of a barrel cactus, perhaps. And
yes.
then, okay, I was right. And then this is not a flower from a barrel cactus. So is this a different?
I planted it there.
All right. I can live with that. I like that concept. So this color palette is just delicious. I absolutely love it. And Karen, you're welcome, by the way. I see your comment. So what would I do with it? Part of me, absolutely loves it just the way it is. Like, I'm usually not a fan at all of rectangular shaped things with a flower in the middle. Like, I would normally say, let's do a square crop, let's do something different. But for some reason, I think this is one of those things that sort of breaks the rules for me, and I like it. I might want to just get rid of this little thing over here, sort of on its own, hanging out in left field. I would maybe get rid of that little bit there if my computer will allow. Oh, I picked the wrong tool. That would help. All right, so let me try that again. Get rid of that little bit there. It's just sort of floating off onto its own. It doesn't necessarily help. One more strike and that should do it. So I really, I just kind of like this. I love the colors with it. It's just beautiful, and your flower is not overexposed. You can see the detail in the petals. A lot of times people really overblow those things. Maybe a hair here, but that might be due to blurring effect as well. So I like that. If if you're wondering, well, if I did crop it, what would I do? I don't know that I would necessarily crop, because I lose this concept of the prickly pear, and I love all this diagonal line stuff. I'm a huge fan of diagonal lines. If I did anything, and I don't know that I would, because I really kind of like it, I might consider what would happen if we extended it out even more, but I don't know that that would necessarily do anything. So to be honest, I kind of just really, really like it the way it is, but it's one of those unusual things. Whoops, I forgot to do the content aware part. It's one of those unusual situations where a rectangular, to me anyway, and others may have a different idea, but where a rectangular crop on a thing center focus, like right in the middle of the image, usually those things get lost. And this works, but I think it's because of the context and the diagonal lines. And that's my 2 cents. But if others have a comment or an idea, I'm really open to those things as well. And I don't know that I'm going to like what I'm going to do any better. I think it's cool. And the colors, again, I just love, 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 love the colors that are in here. That yellow and warm peachy. They got a little touch of green with the white. It's really, really pretty.
Well, thank you.
Another thought that I just had about this, if you wanted to really get creative, I'm going to cancel out of this here. Well, it kind of worked, but I do like the negative space. I don't know, that could be an option. But the other thought I have, keeping it where it is what if you broke it up into a triptych? So if we did a new image here, and I am going to pick this one for the moment. And then edit. I'm going to rotate this. All right. And then we took your image and I pasted it in here, and it's probably going to be way the wrong size. So let me size it down. Actually, let me do something different here. Take this out. So what if we did this? So if I took, and I'm going to size this down a little bit just for the sake of time. And then I did a triptych in this way. So we took, just giving you some ideas to chew on. I'm going to estimate that this is 1. And then here, I'm going to post it and move it over. And then 2. Ballparking that these are going to be even. If I was doing this for real, I'd be much more meticulous. And then 3, and then this, and take that and move that over here. Kind of pull these things in together a little bit better. And then let me layer style, and I'll put a little bevel and drop shadow on it. And then do the same for this. You'll get an idea what it would look like on the wall. And I'm doing this super quickly. I would play more with it if I had more time. Let's see, layer, bevel, and then drop shadow. Oh, I picked the same layer. Where's my third one? That's the one that I missed. Okay, layer style, bevel and emboss. And then drop shadow, and okay. Now you kind of get the idea of what that would look like on the wall. And that, to me, looks killer.
Yes, I like that. Thank you.
I love that. That would be a really pretty way to work with that image, just as an idea, but I love that.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I agree.
So I think that takes it to a new level. And now you know how to do it.
Thank
So
you.
you'd order 3 prints, but now you know you can divide those up in Photoshop and turn them into 3 separate images,
Right.
and and play with that. You'd play with the balance of it to make sure they're equally, at least the left and the right piece are equal distance.
Right.
It doesn't have to be equal in the middle, like exactly a third and a third and a third, but the 2 edges need to be, in my opinion.
Okay.
So yeah, good, cool image. I love this. I want that on my wall.
Oh, cool.
All right, nicely done.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for submitting that one, Leslie. It's really pretty. I mean, just in love with the colors so much.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was a creative idea to put that flower in there. Oh, now isn't this pretty? Now we're dealing with another cactus flower. Is this a prickly pear blossom?
Yeah, this is a Queen of the Night.
Oh, Queen of the Night. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
And this was early morning. It wasn't quite opened.
Okay, got it. And what lens did you shoot this with?
I shot this with a macro 105.
Got it. Because I can tell you've just picked like a focal plane right in here, and a little bit of this picks up on it, and everything instantly blurs out. So it's very kind of painterly and ethereal, which I can appreciate that. There's enough sharpness there that you still have sharp where you need it. I wonder, just looking in at this more closely, I wonder if we couldn't tighten up a little bit of the sharpness even further. I'm just going to use a sharpen tool really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Normally I would do this with more, pizzazz. I'm wondering if some of those lines couldn't, just a few, just work with that in there a little bit to crisp up some of that area. And then we could also go in, I'm going to go in an overlay layer here. I do that a lot. You've probably seen that by now. And then maybe 3%. And you could go in and zoom in here. Go in with that overlay layer, 3%, and even lightly play up some more of that white just to make it almost appear like, I'm going to use a little heavier layer, heavier opacity. Just make it appear. Is that pure white that I'm using? Yes. Okay. A little bit lighter. And for some reason, is it showing up on your monitor? Because it doesn't seem to be showing up on mine when I'm doing it.
It is showing on mine.
Okay. All right. So maybe it's
very slight.
okay. It could be my monitor too. Like I said, I haven't calibrated the darn thing yet. I just got it and have been traveling and yada, yada. I might try just playing with that. And again, I'm doing it in a hurry. I don't want it to look real obvious, but you can sometimes create an extra feel like light is just touching some of these areas, and just play up that light a little bit more.
Oh yeah, I see the difference, yes.
Yeah, so there's after, there's before, and I already flattened the layer when I did this stuff. Just a little thought that, again, the more contrast, and not that you want harsh contrast here, but it will pull people's eye in a little bit more to where you want them to go so they don't have to guess, and then you can subdue the rest. But I like the square crop on it, and I like the choice of the macro.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate the feedback.
Oh gosh, Leslie, yeah, my pleasure. I appreciate you coming. All right, so let's do, how many more can I fit in here tonight before we get going? I've got, well, there's a few more. All right, Marcy, hey, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm glad that you're here and submitted something. So this is one of my favorite plants to photograph, the agaves. They're really, really cool. And I love that you have this really pretty green background in here too, this warm limey green color. It's another one of my favorite colors. So, and you've even got, this little web and some of these little details here in focus. Focus is everything and stuff, isn't it? And I actually really like, Marcy, that you chose to cut off the point on this last one, because I think it would have sort of felt weird in the image if that were all, the point, and then you just kind of had empty sky up here, whatever it is, negative space. I like that this sort of is unconventionally cropped like that. I think that's really cool. The one thing that I'm not sure if I like it or don't like it is this little bit here. It's not a deal breaker for me, but I don't know if it enhances it or not. So a slightly different composition could help. But it's not a deal breaker either because it's not in focus. It sort of, goes away. But I wonder, and again, I always just sit and I go, I wonder, and then you can love it or hate it. But if we took it out for just a second, and I'm doing this uber quickly, and then I went with a little bit of a different crop here. And again, I'm experimenting. I'm not saying that I love or hate this. I'm wondering if that doesn't work a little bit better. And it's a very narrow image now. I understand that, but it might clean up things a little bit. I don't know. I'm just thinking outside the box here. There's the before. Well, I've cropped it a little bit, but there's the before and then, the after once I crop it. Just something to think about, but it's not a deal breaker either way. And in some other ways it ties this in, but I feel like my eye wants to go over here and then I don't really get a reward when I get here. So what can I hang out on? What can I explore? Do I like it? And that's the only little thing. But my goodness, this bokeh on the background is exquisite, and your focus is really nice too. We're getting in these details and the contrast. I just love that quite a bit. So nice choice, and nice choice on this being out of focus and this being really out of focus, so you have nice depth of field. And even got a little bit of a diagonal line going on here, which I really enjoy. If you played with one other thing, and again, I'm just experimenting to see how it would look. If I brought up a teeny bit of the highlight in here that you already have, I wonder if that wouldn't just make it pop a little bit more and give people a little added extra something, to appreciate in here, because you've already got such nice texture. It just might bring out that texture a little more to play with some of that. And I won't spend all night doing this, but I'm just using a little white overlay to kind of play with those things and give people a little bit more bonus. You could even go in real tight and play up that spider web if you really, really wanted to. I could go in and just make that a hair more apparent. Got to do it carefully, and you got to do it right. You got to color on the line, so to speak. Whoops. But there's the before, there's the after. It just kind of gets my eye up into that point a little bit more where, kind of where I think you wanted your viewers to spend their time. So just a thought, you could even play with this contrast in here a little bit more with light and shade. Again, nothing is mandatory here. I'm just going, what captures my eye? I like texture. If I were to play with that and lighten those things and just strategically darken this a little bit in here, you've got pretty darn good composition with this overall. That just might be something to experiment with and see what you get when you're done, because now I'm creating extra texture for people to pay attention to. So there's before, there's after. So just something to think about a little bit, Marcy, but really good. Yeah, good choice to leave the web in. Karen said that. And Marcy, if this is your first attempt at macro, you're on a roll, because most people, when they do macro, nothing's in focus. And yeah, I'm glad you didn't take out the web. And I think you could highlight that a little more than even I did and really have some fun with that. For all these folks doing first attempts at a variety of things tonight, light painting and macro and whatnot, really, gosh, really good out of the box. I'm impressed. Okay, I'm going to continue the critique offline and finish off with the images that were submitted for this month's session. So Rod Buell submitted this wonderful picture of a blue-footed booby, and I'm going to re-clarify that my computer monitor may be calibrated differently than your screen, so what I'm seeing and what you may be seeing could be two different things. So with regard to color, lightness, darkness, and so forth. So in looking at this, one of the things that I love first right off the bat, and I'm going to go and grab my crop tool here, is the fact that it really fits well into the rule of thirds. So if I get my crop tool here, whoops, excuse me. Hold on. Oh, I didn't mean to crop that. Hold on, there we go. All right. So if I get my crop tool and put this, and you can see the nice rule of thirds with the bird sitting right on that left side looking into the frame, which is wonderful, as opposed to him or her sitting to, over here looking out of the frame. That doesn't usually look as good. Got pretty good depth of field here going with regard to separating the subject from the background. The rocks behind are much blurrier than the rock that the bird is sitting on, which helps define the subject better. So I like those things quite a bit. If I were to, and again, this could be a difference in my monitor than what I'm seeing. If I were applying those rules of your eye goes to the brightest things first and then the darkest things, and where there's sharp contrast, it goes to there first, what I tend to notice is I look at the bird and then my eye quickly is pulled up here into this bright area, and I want it to stay here. I sometimes struggle to see the outline of the bird from the rocks. So I might actually go into Camera Raw filter for this. It might be a little easier way for me to do it, or if you have Lightroom, you could try it that way. And go in with my my brush, and I'm going to do an adjustment layer. I'm going to first reset the local settings all to 0. I'm going to pull the contrast, or excuse me, the exposure down, my highlights down, and I could go in with a brush that is feathered at 100%, so it's very soft, and I could start to pull down these really bright areas up here so that it just doesn't take away from my view of the bird as much. And I'm doing this really quickly because of the sake of time, but you get the idea. When I would be doing it for real, I would be going in and zooming way in, pulling my brush size way down, and getting into some of those corners and crevices, right? So I'm doing it just on the fly really quickly so that you get the idea, but that would tone down that back a little bit more. And again, I know I was being sloppy in that, so that the bird's a little easier to see. So pulling down these highlights can help. This is one way to do it. Another way to do it would be a global slider of pulling all the highlights out and then masking in the bird. So another option for that, again, if I cancel out of this, we have this as the original image. I've duplicated it here so we have a background layer. The other option, there's always different ways to do this. I can go back to Camera Raw filter and I could pull the highlights down in general. See how that changes the highlights in the background? It also darkens the bird, which I don't love, but I could leave that as it is. And then, and you could also try pulling down exposure if you wanted to do it even more. And then I open that image back into Photoshop. Well, here's the before, here's the after. So the background is toned down much more nicely, but now we need to mask out the bird so that the bird is actually brighter again. I don't want to use my erase tool for that because then I don't have any way to go back and change anything. You've removed portions of that layer. So what I want to do is do a mask, and I click on the mask icon down here. I go and grab my brush with white and black, and I change my my brush softener, the hardness to 0. The opacity, I'm probably going to pull this up right around 100% here. And then the black removes and the white adds the layer back. So I want to remove portions of this, this top layer here. And so if I, let me go back in and change my brush size to something smaller. Bear with me here. All right, there we go. So I'm going to change my brush size. There we go. And I'm going to zoom in, and I can start to mask out this darker layer so that the bird underneath shows. You want to be very careful not to have overlap, or you'll start to get a halo because the background will look brighter right around the bird. So you really got to kind of paint within the lines, if you will, and do this. I'm doing this quickly. You'd want to pay much more attention to the detail. But once I do this and I restore that lightness that was originally in the light of the bird, and again, pay very close attention to staying in the lines. And by the way, if you go out of the lines, you can go to your white palette and paint over it, and it will restore what you goofed. So it's very forgiving. So I'm going to go in here and do this pretty quickly so you can see the outcome. And missed a couple spots here. I'm going to widen my brush a little more so I can paint with broader strokes. But keep in mind this brush has a feathered edge, so it's very easy to kind of paint outside the lines quite a bit, even when it barely looks like they're outside the lines because of that feathering effect. So you'll want to make sure that you restore anything that you made a mistake on. All right, I'm going to go through and finish this up pretty quickly. Again, if I was doing this for myself, I would make this far more detail oriented and I would be more careful, but this is like a cooking show. We got to cook it up quickly here so I can serve you the results. All right, so you get the idea, and I would go in the details and work on these feet. And you could even go, so you want a light match, you could actually go in with your opacity at maybe 30% and play in these rocks a little bit and lighten up some of those rocks so that it doesn't look quite so dark. Because remember, we took out all the exposure, for the whole image, we took down the exposure and the highlights. You may need to bring some of that back. You may also want to lighten some of the darkest background rocks so that you don't have a situation where it's creating an eyesore that's pulling your eye too much to the stuff in the back. So I'm at about 30% opacity. It's additive, meaning the more times I click, the lighter it will get, and I can even out some of that stuff in the background. And you could even change your opacity if you find you really need to, but this is just a simple way to kind of play with that bird and give that bird a little more separation from the background. So here's the before. Here's the after. And you can see how that bird stands out a little bit more. We could even go in, and I know this isn't a Photoshop lesson, but I'm doing it anyway. We could even go in with my brush and a white overlay and change my opacity to about 5%. And you can always rewatch this video and watch the steps that I did. I'm going through quickly. This isn't a Photoshop tutorial, but I could go in and pull up this bird's eye a little bit more. I lighten just in a couple of strategic places to give it a little bit more definition. I could go in and also brighten up or define, pieces of the beak if I need to at all, give it a little more dimension. And also if I need to lighten up the head at all. Just remember, your eye is drawn into the places where there's high contrast, so you can play with these things in here until you get the look and feel that you like without it being artificial. So I am going in here. Sorry for all those noises on my computer if you're hearing those. I'm going to go in. I can actually play with the dark and light areas of the skin here. Lighten that up a little bit. Lighten this up in here, and I'm just using a soft brush, low opacity, very transparent kind of thing. And when we come out, I'm going to do the before and then the after, and you can see how just a little bit of that light white just gives it a little more punch to the bird's face. So Rob, your composition was great. I just kind of pulled away some of those annoying features in the background that I'm sure you would have loved to get rid of as well. And then, you can always go in a little bit further, and if you see things that draw your eye in a distracting way, like this line of guano here, we could use Healing Brush to get rid of that. Or if that doesn't work so well, you could grab Clone Brush and, kind of tone some of that down, get rid of any of those distracting things. And then same with this dark spot in the corner. I might go and grab a sample from here and maybe go at 20% opacity and lightly overlay some of this texture up here to just lighten that. I mean, there's 100 different ways you could do this, but lighten that area over here so that you have just a little bit more, I kind of cloned in wrong, but a little bit more evenness so my eye isn't pulled to some of those darkest areas. Last thing you could try, and again, these are all just options, love it or hate it, and also keep in mind my monitor may look different than yours, so give me a little bit of flexibility with that. You could add a little vignette that you barely see around the edges of this to keep the person's eye in the center towards the bird. So now there's the original, and then there's the final one, and it can just make your bird pop a little bit more. Beautiful picture of a bird I've always wanted to see, and congratulations on the opportunity to get that bird. All right, next image up is Marcy. Marcy, you took this lovely image of a daisy, and I used to be a floral designer a long time ago, and I've used these so often over the years, but they're always fun and fresh. I love your composition so much. It's just simple and it gets me to the center where I need it to be. I love the detail. I'll grab my pointer. I love the detail around here at the bottom. This is what really attracts me the most, is these pieces here. And then I come through and I get these nice lines up here. I really enjoy this image. And I love that it looks to be tack sharp through it. I know if I'm blowing this up, and you may have sent me a reduced resolution image too, there's probably more detail in here. But the way you composed for it, I truly, truly enjoy. What I'm curious about, and I don't know that I'll like this, but if you're just looking for a place to go with it, if I went into filters and I go back to my Adobe Raw, and you could do this in Lightroom as well, if I went in and I pulled the clarity slider up just a hair, I'm wondering what that might do to your image. So let me apply that. It just made things pop a little bit more, but sometimes a little bit can be too much. So you're going to have to watch it. I don't know if I'm dealing with a reduced resolution image, but clarity can really increase the pixelization and sometimes the noise. So again, there's slight differences here, but either way, I actually like it, and I kind of almost like it in the previous version, the before, which is what we're looking at it now. I don't know that there's a whole lot I would really do here. I think your composition was good, and I like the image. All right, I'm going to move along. Mark Scarlett. All right, fall time. I love autumn. It's my favorite season. So anyways, I love this image. I love the way you juxtaposed complementary colors on the color wheel. So red and green are complementary colors. These are kind of muted versions of those, but they work really well together, and it was a smart choice to do that. I like the line of the leaf coming in, sitting here as kind of a focal point, and then you have some other color back here. You get the idea that this is sitting on a piece of moss, and that there's other stuff going on back here. One thing that's a hair distracting for me, and I think it's an easily fixable thing, is this dark shape here. And so if I went in, and again, it all depends on your preference for Photoshop. I'm not saying you have to Photoshop things, but if this was going on your wall, you might want to think about it. I'm going to do about a 30% opacity, and I'm going to grab some texture from in here, and I'm just going to lightly paint it in here and maybe grab a little more texture, kind of just fill in with somewhat abstractness here, so that it doesn't look cloned. And that might just getting rid of some of those super dark areas might help the overall image. And again, it might look a little different on my screen than yours. You don't want to flatten it out completely, but sometimes those are stopping points for my eye, and that can be a little distracting. So that shaped that up a little bit. And then I'm looking at your leaves, and I love the water droplets. There's a little technique you can apply if you like, and I'm going to go, normally I don't use dodge a lot, but I'm going to use it in this case. Usually I do overlay layers. I'm going to take my highlights, as I'm going to dodge highlights, which means I'm going to bring them up even more. I'm going to change my exposure down to about 3%, because a little of this goes a long way. And then if you punch up some of the highlights in the water droplets, and you want to pay attention to where those natural highlights exist. You don't want to do the whole water droplet. Find the highlighted areas. You're kind of doing some selective contrast enhancement here. And there's probably a few different ways you could do this, but I'm just doing one really quick way. I'm not going to do all the dots, but you get the drops, but you get the idea. And then if you go in and change to your burn tool and you burn your shadows, and you get that tool really small, and go in and play up some of those shadows a little bit more that are already there. Keep in mind, I'm not going to do all these. These are little tricks. There's a point where you can do this too much and it looks fake. So you really got to watch it. And again, my monitor could be, different than yours. So if you're looking at it, you're like, wow, Lisa, that looks ridiculous. Then you probably know why. There's a difference in the monitors. So when I zoom back out on this image, and I'm going to do the before and then the after, you'll see that that pulls your eye a little bit more into those water droplets, which I think is one of the most appealing things of this, is just that texture of the water. And it just makes them pop. There's a point where they're going to look too dramatic, though, and too fake. So you got to be careful with that, but that can help a little bit. And then some other things you might want to try with the moss. This is a lovely image. I'm not saying anything necessarily wrong. I'm giving you some little tools and things to think about that could just pump it up a little more. So you've got some natural highlight here. And I'm just taking an overlay layer. So I'm creating a layer, choosing overlay, choosing opacity at 5%, choosing my white brush and a very soft brush, so my hardness at 0, and going in and play up some of these natural layers that are in here. So you've got a little bit of highlight here, a little bit of highlight here. You can create some additional depth in this moss by doing so. And if you don't like to do it that way, you could always go back to your dodge tool and pick highlights and just punch up some of the highlights in here. Right? Just a few. Doesn't have to be all of them, but if you want to give it a little more depth. And then you could also go in and burn down your shadows. Whoops. And that can kind of have a similar effect of just creating a little bit of additional depth in those areas. So I've pulled up the highlights and I've pulled down the shadows a hair more. So I'll do a before and after. It's subtle, but there's the before, there's the after, and I might play with this a little more with the highlights here, because I really like this limey green played up in here. Sometimes you may have to go into midtones to do it because the colors might be, they look like highlights, but in actuality it's a midtone color compared to the full palette of light there. So that might be something to think about. You could think about doing a little vignette. I'm not saying any of these things are must-dos. I'm giving you ideas, and that's it. It's just an opinion, right? So, but I love that. I love what you've done. It's such a simple thing. So there's the original. Nothing inherently wrong with this. I think the main thing was just getting rid of that dark blob. But you can play with different things to kind of pull the attention towards the leaf, which is the star of the show. All right, so thank you for submitting that, Mark. I appreciate it. Oh, next, I loved this. When I saw this come through, it excited me. I really love your processing and the drama that is in the contrast of this. I honestly am not sure that I would do anything else to it. The only thing, and I think it's my monitor, is this looks to be, and I'm going to take a color sample here. This looks to be gray on my monitor, but you know what? It's a little bit gray. I don't have a problem with that. I'm just wondering if you intended it for it to be black and my monitor was showing up wrong, or whether it was the image. But it looks like it's actually part of the image. I really love this. I don't know that I would do anything else to it. It looks like maybe you put a little vignette around the edge of this, which smart choice on that. I truly, truly, truly enjoy this. I love this detail that's in here. If I zoom way in, you can see all the pieces of the sycamore gum tree. Beautiful, 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 beautiful image. And I'm saying sycamore, and I'm thinking that's not right. My brain is stuck on what this tree is, and I just can't come up with it. So anyway, I love this. I think it's beautiful the way it is. I wouldn't do a thing with it. All right, so let's see here. Rod, I think you had another image. Oh, hummingbird. And this is such a pretty bird. This is a broad-tailed hummingbird, and I absolutely adore the light that this is in. So if you had some off-camera flash or it was a sunny day, I'm not sure which one, but it's really, really pretty. I'm thinking this is natural light because I'm looking at the light on the branch as well. Everything looks pretty consistent, but however you did it, it looks really, really nice. Excuse me, a couple things that I would do to just clean it up and get rid of the stumbling blocks. That's all I'm going to do on this is, this little thing down here kind of takes my eye away, and there's no real kind of benefit for that to be there. So I'm going to take that out. I'm using my healing brush to do so because it will likely match that gradient a lot better. Sometimes you got to do it a few times. Sometimes you do also need to use clone if it doesn't quite work, but I'm going to try to make it work. No, that doesn't work. All right, I'll try clone and see what we can do here. All right, I'll get rid of it one way or the other. There you go. So that, and then this one up here, I could also circle it and then go to image, or excuse me, edit, fill, ContentAware Fill. Get rid of that little guy up there. That's gone. I think that cleans up the image a little bit more. I like your choice of vignetting a little bit that you did. You could maybe even pull a little bit of vignetting over here as well. I'll do a quick one to see if I like it or not. Do an overlay layer, black. I'm at 5%. Kind of tone that down just a little bit. It just pulls your eye back into the center of this, into the center of this image. And I would play with it more so it doesn't look so stark. But maybe just tone these leaves down a hair so that the bird is the standout. And then you could go in with the bird. And I do love this image. You could play up even more the light and the color here of it. That's just I'm playing at this point. You could also go in with the eye. It looks like you may have done this. And pull up that highlight a little more and just let me connect with that eye. Whoops. All right. So, and again, I'm doing these things quickly. I would be more detail oriented if I had more time. So there's the original. There's the final product, in my opinion. And again, keep in mind my monitor might look a little different than yours. All right, so I think I have covered all of the remaining images that we had this afternoon. I hope this was helpful. I really appreciate you guys participating and submitting, and hopefully I'll see folks next month. Have a great day.